The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening and welcome to this House of Musicians radio show with your host, singer, songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email addresses are thisHouseofMusicians@gmail.com or instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your host of this House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Everybody, and to our listener, welcome to this House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101. We hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and venues. Gary, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm just over the moon, excited tonight. We have the founding member, one of the founding members of the band Fludd from back in the 60s and 70s, Mr. Ed Pilling on the show. Can you believe that?
Hey, yay!
Hello, hi, Ed.
How are you?
Good. How are you tonight?
Bloody lovely.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Good. Welcome to our show. It's an honor to have you here.
Pleasure.
I know you have a lot of amazing stories to tell tonight. We're going to play a couple of your big songs. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Let's start, Ed. You're welcome, sir. Let's start right at the beginning. I guess we're going back to, let's say, you went to England in '69, but before that, you had a band called the Pretty Ones with Greg Godovich. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. That's how it really kind of all started. My brother Brian went to school with Greg at Porter Collegiate.
Cool.
And met him there. And my brother and I had always been a bit of doing vocals and harmonies and singing and playing at home a bit. And I was on drums at the time, but I always sang. And Brian was telling me about Greg, and they hit it off like a house on fire because Greg was a total Beatle fan, as we were, and all that. So, yeah, that's how the Pretty Ones kind of started. And I was, as I was mentioning to you a little earlier, for the people listening, it was pretty amazing that Greg's father found the drum cover. I made a drum skin fill-in, which probably deadened my sound terribly, but it's out of fiberglass, and I put Pretty Ones on the front, and he found it a couple of years ago, and I've got it sitting in my studio now, so that was pretty awesome.
Oh, I'm sure it was to get and you said earlier that you even completely forgot about it until you got it, so I bet you that's
yeah.
Oh, don't let Greg hear that.
Well, it had long lost all our minds, and it was Greg's dad that happened to find it because we rehearsed it. The God of his house, his mother was the most wonderful woman to put up with that, and that's where we rehearsed. And we just to tell you the name, like our favorite, place to go and safest without getting beat up was going down the Yorkville Village in the early days of Yorkville. And one of the most popular places was Charlie Brown's on Cumberland. He was just off Yorkville. And the Ugly Ducklings were the band at that time, and we loved them. We thought they were like the Rolling Stones revisited totally. And Glenn Bell looked exactly like Brian Jones. It was bizarre. Anyway, it was a wonderful spot, and we ended up getting to play there with the Pretty Ones one night.
That's amazing. And we're going to talk about Greg a bit, because I'm sure you got some really cool stories. I know he was quite the cowboy when he was younger, and you kind of, I'm going to just say, maybe like not looked after him, but at least pulled him away from a lot of things that might have went wrong. Yes.
Well, I was his big brother that had to make sure he didn't get hurt. As I did with my other brother, but my other brother wasn't quite as lippy. Gregory had and still does, was gotta love him for it, because he's got his own attitude and he's got his opinion, and I love him for that.
Absolutely. We had him on the show. He mentioned that when you guys were younger, touring around Toronto, playing around Toronto, that because you had long hair back then and stuff, that there was a probability of getting beat up a lot.
All the time.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, you can't, when you talk to people about, quote, the Toronto the Good and all this racial stuff that's going on, it upsets me a bit, in the sense that I don't think people realize what's needed to be spoken about in the schools. If you come from another country and you've got a different accent and slightly different clothes and whatnot, you're prejudiced. You don't have to be black. You don't have to be any color. You can just be a white Anglo-Saxon coming from Birmingham and be just treated as badly. And then, and actually when, then we went into the long hair thing, that was another danger zone, because all that people wanted to do, as they termed in those days, is call you a faggot or a gay, and wanted to beat you up because of that. So it was, I always find it interesting how that word prejudice is a very, it's an easy word to throw around, but it doesn't take much to be in that position of being prejudiced against.
Yeah, it could mean a lot of different things at the same time.
A lot of different things.
You and your brother Brian packed up your bags and headed to England in '69 and formed a band called Wages of Sin. Let's just touch on that for a bit. That must have been exciting.
It was exciting, because when I'd left Canada first, I had it with school and everything else, and I just went back to live with my Aunt Hilda, who was the most wonderful lady on the planet, and was the inspiration for the song Cousin Mary, actually. But she was just the most amazing lady, and she was still living in the house where we were all born, because she lived with us from the get-go, and it was my father's sister, and she was just lovely. And she just put up with everything. Like we're playing in a band, coming in the middle of the hours of the night, she's sitting in front of the fireplace with her newspaper. I said, well, she'd be like, do you want a cup of tea? And then she's like, okay, thank you, And she was just an adorable, incredible woman.
Amazing. So then you, while you were in England, like I say, you formed the band Wages of Sin. This is in '69. And less than a year later, Cat Stevens saw you guys and thought you guys were absolutely amazing. And you started touring, I guess, as the backup band. Were you called Zeus then?
What happened was, it wasn't Cat that came up, but the amazing thing about this story to me is that Birmingham, and at that time there was bands it was music everywhere. I was right in the heart of all that going on. So to even get noticed was, it's a tough haul. But it was Cat Stevens' brother that came up to a gig. We were playing in this big pub with a big stage and all that. He came up from London because he'd heard about us, so that in itself was amazing. And then Cat, I don't know whether he heard tapes or people or talking about us, he wanted his brother to come and talk to us about coming to work with them. And he did. So he shows up at this place this night. Of course, my brother and I talking to him on one of our breaks, and he says, I'm Cat Stevens' brother. And we were like, yeah, I'm the Queen of England. And, you just listen to stories. And he said, no, I'm serious, and we want to talk about it. Can I come back to your house? I said, okay. So anyway, the only time this hit home as being absolutely realistic was when we went outside in the parking lot and got into our crummy little group van. There was this stretch limo there that he got into. I thought, well, Brian looks like he's telling the truth.
Wow.
So we came back to our house. So we're sitting there. And of course, Aunt Hilda's got the tea on. And we're all coming in, it's like, I don't know, 2 a.m. And he's talking to us about all this. And the main thing was Cat was going to, and he was huge in that, at that point. He was doing like I Love My Dog and Matthew and Son. His early, before he did the Tea for the Tillerman move, he was just 16 himself. We were about this, not far off the same age. But he was a big star.
Wow.
But it was a time when he hated being on stage. It's a solo guy with a guitar. This was the time when music was exploding with bands and excitement. So he was smart in the sense that he didn't want to do this gig on his own on a stool. He wanted a band that was kind of exciting with him, I guess. And so he said, brother says to us that night and with everybody, like, well, the thing is, you got to leave now. And we went, what?
Wow.
So we had to walk away from a year's worth of gigs, and we were very popular. And that's a pretty tough move to make against your agents and people that are booking you,
For sure.
But my brother and I always thought this, like, it's a matter of, in music, opportunity knocks, I feel. And if you got somebody coming up from London, the Cat Stevens brother wants you to go and play with him, I think it's time to go.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, of course.
So we packed our stuff, got to London at, I don't know, some ungodly hour. And he stuck us in a pub and some rooms, and took us around to another pub that had some rehearsal space, brought in a few Cat Stevens tunes, including First Cut to the Deepest, which wasn't anything at that point. It wasn't a hit. And we learned these few songs in the afternoon. The next day, his brother brings Cat over, and of course Cat arrives through the door in these dark shades and his big fur coat, looking like Mr. Rockstar, intimidating the hell out of us.
Of course.
So anyway, the brother, he didn't even talk. The brother says, okay, go ahead, Ed. So, okay, so we did a few songs, took his shades off, started to smile, took his coat off, said, that's fantastic. And
that's great.
We were just buddies, and then went on the tour with him with Spencer Davis, Zoot Money, and a whole bunch of other people.
That's an incredible story. So I got to ask you. Sorry, go ahead. That's how music works. It's a crazy place, as you well know. And that's why you have to make those moves, because if you don't, what are you doing? You have to have a little courage and determination to just, okay, this sounds like we better do this now. For sure. When opportunity knocks, you jump at it. You got to go. I just have to ask you, what was the man Cat Stevens like? You knew him personally. Well, he was a nice young guy, because we're all young. We're all kids, right? And we got on fine until we got over there. And we realized we liked a beer, just got into having a beer, if you will, because we were too young to drink anyway. He was drinking a bottle of vodka to get on stage. Because he didn't like it. He was terrified. He was a great songwriter. He was not a stage guy, Yeah, sure. Which is fine. And but he was smart. What he did, and it's funny. You can go on. There's a little clip. Where the hell this ever came from, Barry, I don't know. I'd love to see if there's any more. But there's a piece of film footage on YouTube of Cat Stevens, 1969, the first cut is the deepest, Paris Olympia, which is kind of the equivalent to Maple Leaf Garden. And there's the band, my brother doing harmony with him. I'm not on because he was the lead singer at that point. Then he went off, and I came on and became the lead singer of our band. That's how it worked, right? Wow. But it's actually on YouTube. Yeah, that's killer. I'm going to have to look for that for sure. Well, so so then I guess you did a little stint with Cat Stevens, and then you and your brother returned back to Canada and recruited Greg again in the band as the bass player. Let's talk about what happened when you guys all got back together here in Canada. Yeah, well, what happened was Cat was all of a mess, and he wanted to just keep us in a hotel, and we didn't know what to do, and we couldn't go back to Birmingham. So that's when we actually broke the band up, which was sad because it was a great band.
the boys went back to Birmingham. Brian and I came back to Canada, and then we were here for a little bit. And I ran into a bloke called Bill Evans, I think it was, Bill Price. He had a music store, and John Anderson was one of the kids that was teaching drums there. So we got to talking to John, and he's a great drummer. And of course, Brian got back in touch with Greg, and so on and so on. And so, yeah, we started to put this band together with John and a few other guys. And
you got Mick Walsh on guitar.
Yeah, he was the first guy, and he was a beautiful man. And we rehearsed at John's house, and which was also one of the funniest things in the world, because he was always the guy that was late for rehearsals. Because his mom would go upstairs and get him out of bed. Can you believe that?
Well, yeah, it's rock and roll, of course.
I know. Course. People don't. You know, we've all driven from wherever we are, and John's late getting to rehearsal. He's got to go downstairs like 3 flights. It was hilarious.
So what a beautiful start right there, and your career hasn't even really took off or started yet. I mean, it started, of course, but then you became the mainstays of the Toronto club. The mainstays. You did the Toronto club scene, and you landed a contract with Warner Brothers. Yeah, well, the nice thing was that was all due to Adam Mitchell, who used to play with the Poppers, a very established Toronto band at the time. And Adam was a great singer-songwriter. I didn't know him, but he had heard about us, and he was down in L.A. doing production work and songwriting for different bands. And he came to see us, and he loved our songwriting, because at that point, Brian and I developed our songs and started to write the music, right? Which is always that very strange little switch over when people come to see you, because you do Beatles songs, Moody Blues really well, and through the night you slip in 1 or 2 of your own, and they go over almost the same, and then you kind of switch over so that all of a sudden you're doing all your own stuff and it's still going over the same. That's when you know you've made the right move. Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
But it's a scary process, you know. But anyway, he came out to see us, and he loved our music, and he said, I think I can do something for you. Okay, so he got us this record contract with Warner based on our songwriting.
Amazing. And that was then you did a self-titled album called Fludd. It was released in 1971, and you had a top hit, Turn 21.
Right off the get-go, which was pretty cool. Wow. You know, to do that right off your first record and that first album, that Turn 21 got a lot of airplay. In fact, if Warner Brothers America had really known about who we were, because they don't know where Canada is anyway, so for us to be down in L.A. as a Canadian band, they would never give us a second thought. But it was a hit record. What they normally do would climb all over it and get you touring, and they didn't, and that was a bit of a shame, because there was an an Australian band called New Dream, and it's out there. They covered that song right off the top. It was a big hit in Australia. Well, amazing. we should have been down there touring with that song.
Yes,
but there you go. It was one of those things.
And from the same album, you had the song which we're going to play here in a couple of minutes. You had the same song, a song called "Get Up, Get Out, and Move On" off the same album, right?
Oh no, that wasn't off that album. No.
Okay, that was off.
In fact, Get Up, Get Out, and Move On was never on an album. It was a single only.
Oh, jeez, okay.
It was on a greatest hits thing, but it was never. We did a few singles that were not on albums, and that was one of them, just because we wanted to get a single out there, kind of thing, without we hadn't had an album together, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, let's just briefly touch on that song, and then we'll go ahead and play it. I think it's a fabulous song. Your vocals are amazing.
Thank you.
How did you come up with that song?
Well, we always felt like I've had some friends over the years tell me that they used it for their getting up and going to work tune. It's like, because it's a constant get up, get out, and move on. You got to get moving here, boy. There's stuff to do. And that's the sort of daily thinking of a musician anyway. I know that much. So let's get on with it. We got stuff we got to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, that's for sure.
It is.
Well, Absolutely, Ed. Let's go ahead and play this song. Okay. Folks, you can hear this song anywhere on music social media platforms. It's all over the place out there. So be sure and go and stream it and have a listen to it. This song is called "Get Up, Get Out, Move On." We have Ed Pilling from the band Fludd on the show. This is one of their tunes, and
it only costs $5 to listen.
Yeah, well,
you wish.
You wish you get $5 a stream. It's amazing how little musicians get nowadays from music platforms.
Don't even take me there.
It's totally gone in a whole kind of sad.
It's very bad
for musicians anyway. But still, nevertheless, it is on vinyl, and it's on your greatest hits, and it's an amazing song. Folks, you're listening to Ed Pilling from the band Fludd on this House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101. This song is called "Get Up, Get Out, and Move On."
I've been up, I've been down, I've been moving around, and I think I might have lost the way. You go in, you go out, you can fiddle about, but you really have naught to say. So get up and get out and move on. I think you've been here much too long. So get up and get out and move on. There's really nothing else to say. So get up, get down, down. Yes, get up. I've been there, I've been crowned, made my living with sound, and I'm just about to find my way. Look me up, look me down, turn my head round and round, leave me here to live from day to day. So get up and get out and move on. I think you've been here much too long. So get up and get out and move on. There's really nothing else to say. So get up, get down, down, down. Yes, get up. I've been up, I've been down, I've been moving around, and I think I might have lost the way. You go in, you go out, you can fiddle about, but you really have naught to say. So get up and get out and move on. I think you've been here much too long. So get up and get out and move on. There's really nothing else to say. So get up, get down, down, down. Yes, get up, get down, get down, get down, down. Yes, get up, get down, down, down.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Tonight on the show we have the one and only Mr. Edmund Pilling from the band Fludd. We just played "Get Up, Get Out, and Move On," a song that Ed wrote. I guess it was 72, would that be, Ed?
Yeah, roughly I would say around there, yeah.
Well, let's touch on that song. How did you guys come up with that song?
It was just a motivational tune when you sort of get up every day as a musician. We did anyway, and try to, let's do something. We got something else to do here. We got things to do. There was always something to do. And
it's like a job, sure.
Yeah, and you got to get on with it. It's not going to do itself, and your determination and energy is what's really going to make it all work. And so it was kind of coming from that zone, getting up, get out and move on. Let's get at it,
Great attitude. Now, you said that Brian, the guitar player, just got a wah, and you can hear it all over that song. He put it to good use.
Well, anything he did really well. He was very savvy on anything. And I remember when he got his first Echoplex, they called it in that day for echo. And anything he got, he would never overuse it. It would never be constant. But I always found my brother was a tasteful guitar player, and a lot of people that know him agree in his melodies, or not just a matter of turning up the guitar and freaking out. He was very tasteful and melodic because of, I suppose, writing the songs together, and he had that ability and would never crowd a song, which is really every musician's job, not to just put your piece in and make it work,
Work with the players and not overpower, correct?
Yes, and that's a skill in itself that we all have to learn, and not overdo things, and it keeps it makes the song more clear too. I mean, a lot of people forget that. The less you put in there, the better clarity they're going to get on what you're trying to say.
Sure. Now, excuse me, you guys continued on to your next project. You were picked up by Frank Davies' upstart label, Daffodil Records, later that year, and released the highly controversial album Cock On, which I guess you could tell us this story. I know we talked about it with Craig too, and Craig's got an amazing tune. What a pumping song called Cock On. But anywho, the highly released, controversial
that was the most ridiculous thing in the world, but it shows you what the world, it's kind of like, it's still the same. It's not that much different. You might be able to get away with more, but then you can get away with, it's worse now. So it's just the thinking of how things work. And the only reason Brian and I wanted to call it Cock On, because Cock On in England, if you sum up and say to somebody, hey, Cock On, it means, all right, everything's good,
Amazing.
It's a positive sign. And we knew it was being a bit cheeky, because we used to get, little articles about, Lighthouse plays for peace, Mainline plays for money, Flood pays for the chicks, So we knew it was being a bit cheeky, but for God's sake, for the record company to attack us, capitalist was through Frank with Daffodil, but they were really nasty about it, and they told us we got to take the word cock off, even though we'd said, can you put a rooster? We'll take a connotation to cock a gun. I don't know. Nope. Sure. So it ended up being, .on, which took away from the whole point. And right. So we were kind of upset about it. And Richie York, that used to own the Rainbow magazine in Toronto, a wonderful guy, and another rebel of those times. We were good friends, and we spoke to him about it. And we said, look, can you do a picture of us in your office, and we'll get Scotch tape, pull our willies between our legs, and take a picture of us being as if we're decocked, because right. We were, and because we're doing our debut, the record company thing was at the Inn on the Park, and all the big hobnobs are coming out in their jewelry and their whatever, and we were going to perform a little bit from the album. So he said, sure, he just thought it was great. So we took this naked picture with all our willies gone and had it blown up into a big picture, put into a big brown envelope. So the night we did this premiere of the new album at the Inn on the Park, all these lovely ladies were handing out our brochures and our album in this big brown envelope. And I always remember we arrived in our limo and did our whole thing, and it was fun. And we're walking in to perform, and I'm watching these people at the table and uncovering their stuff, their goodies they got at the door, and in particular pulling out this great big, and I mean it was big, picture of us all naked with no willies. Well, you should have seen their faces. It was bloody fantastic.
I can imagine.
We got our point across, and that was the end of that.
and of course they didn't allow that.
Well, it was only the picture for them. The album, they've already destroyed our cover. We just thought, here, take this home. You've decocted us. Put it on your bedroom wall. Thank you very much.
Well, the good thing about that album is you had 3 singles that were released. Always Be Thinking of You. Yes. Yeah. And Come On. And always Be Thinking of You. Crack Canada's Top 40. Talk about that. That might have been exciting.
Well, it was. And I mean, it was all good. They got their goods, and they were just not very nice to us. And it's so funny because we ran into a second problem when we did Great Expectations, because my brother and I were really into Charles Dickens and loved his writing and his depth of social consciousness, and which is why we wrote What an Animal and stuff. But when we did that album cover, that was my brother's wife, Barbara, my niece, when she was pregnant. And we thought the birth of a child was probably one of the nicest, best, things of the greatest expectation that could be. And we did this lovely photo. We got an award for the photo, actually. But again, the record company and Sam, the record man, freaked out. He wouldn't put it on the shelves. And he said it was obscene, and he thought it was a boob. And I thought, well, you haven't seen too many tits in your life, obviously. And there's a little doll. It was all done in a very precise, special way, applauding women. And then the irony of it all was there was a piece that I think it was the Sun or the Star, and there's a in the entertainment section on one side there was Fludd's album cover saying with a question mark, "Is this obscene?" And then on the other side, I swear to God, this is the truth, Linda Lovelace was landing in Toronto and getting all this great press about her new book, Deep Throat. And I'm thinking, something wrong with this picture.
No kidding, eh? Yeah, isn't that it? Well, crazy how the world turns.
Well, that's the point. And we were even down when we went down to Sam's because there was a big thing releasing the record, but he didn't want to put it on the shelf. And I spoke to his wife, and she was like talking about it. And I said, listen. So I went over to there was a shelf because I knew this album cover, by the way. I thought this is perfect. I went over to a shelf where Herb Albert, the Tijuana Brass, had just put out an album called Whipped Cream. And there was this woman lying on the cover, covered in whipped cream. And I'm going, but I suppose this isn't sexist at all.
No kidding. That's crazy, eh?
And she just walked away in embarrassment because ours was a pregnant lady at birth of it. This is a kinky shot of a chick in whipped cream. Hello.
Yeah, it's talk about prejudice. But Ed, we got some emails. I want to read them out to you, my friend.
Sure.
This one's from Harry L. Hey Barry, very interesting guest tonight. I can listen to his stories all night. Very cool. That's from Harry. Boy, we have a few here. Here's one from Cody L. Cody L says, hello from Nashville, Tennessee. So good to find very cool music show from up there in Canada. Hey, stay healthy, folks. That's from Cody.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and we got Joanne N. She says, what a story. Fantastic. Such history. And it certainly is.
Thank you.
One from Donna D. Hello. I'm a very first-time listener from Boulder, Colorado. Very interesting guest. Love the format of your show. Rock on. Here's one from Juanita L. Love that song. Amazing. You two copied Fludd's Wah Wah pedal licks. So, yeah, they think that Bono and U2 copied your licks. That's flattery.
No kidding.
There's one from Even H. Hey, what's everybody's web presence? Enjoying the show from Saskatoon. And one more. Here's a question from Ken T. Crazy stories, amazing. How do they come up with the name Fludd?
Oh, I got to tell you this story because it's kind of amusing in itself. like most things when you're doing this. But Brian and I, when we put Fludd together, we went out on the road, started to play with Greg, and it was all going well. We hadn't got a name, so every night we'd come up with a different name, Rumpelstiltskin or Izzy Ozzy or whatever, And one night Brian said to me, what do you think of the name Fludd? I said, oh, I like that. It's powerful. But I said, I don't like the look of it. Like the two O's look too delicate. They're not solid, right? So I changed the spelling to F-L-U-D-D for the graphic.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked and said, yeah, that's good. So sure enough, when we became Fludd and it was out there, doesn't somebody write into the Sun again or the Star and say how clever it was, how wonderful it was that Fludd, the name that they'd taken, he's telling us this in his story, from a Rudyard Kipling poem called The Seeker. And Fludd, spelled F-L-U-D-D, in the poem The Seeker by Rudyard Kipling, is spelled like that. And they thought how clever we were to use that. And we said, yeah, we think so too. we wanted to stay on that high educated level and not tell them it was just a complete fluke.
Absolutely. So you guys went back to England to do your third album, correct?
Yeah, when we were with Frank, we were going to do. We'd found out about a place called the Manor, which was, of course, Richard Branson's studio. It's an old Cromwellian manor, and he started his record business, Virgin, on a barge in the Thames in London, and he was doing really well. So he wanted a very clever. I respect that guy. He's so clever on so many levels. And anyway, his idea was, and it was brilliant because it made perfect sense, was for a band to go and book the place and stay there so that they didn't have to come in every day like you would in a recording studio if you went to LA or any other town. Go back to your hotel, come back in, other bands have been after you. You would have to spend another 3 hours getting a drum sound, da-da-da-da. So not only the cost was bizarre, but it kind of broke the mood and the momentum of things. Mm-hmm. So his idea was, you come in here, stay here, studio set up for you, and that's it. Nobody's touching it. Go to bed when you want, get up when you want. We'll feed you here. This is your place. Well, it was brilliant, you know. Mm-hmm. So apart from the 120 bottles of wine we drank over 11 days, because they had a wine cellar. But anyway, so we're having a good old time, and it was just wonderful. And then we met Branson. He was a really neat guy and all that, you know. But the most bizarre part of this was when one night I was sitting in front of this huge fireplace, and like I say, it's an old Cromwellian manor, so it's beautiful, almost like a castle. And there was a bloke sitting in a chair across from me, and Branson's dog was called Bootleg, which I thought was a perfect name for an Irish wolfhound in a record studio. And this guy sitting across from me, and he's scribbling little stuff on a piece of paper. And I just said hi and introduced myself and so on and so on. And I looked at his stuff, and it was like scratching, but it was musical notes in his thinking. Right. And so on. Anyway, it's a good night to him and all that. And then the crew came to me the next day and said, "Look, Richard's got this guy here, Mike. Can he use your equipment in your studio when you're not playing?" And we said, "Sure, go ahead. You know, why not?" Anyway, we get back to Canada, and not long after this, and I find out this is Mike Oldfield, and he's recording Tubular Bells on our gear.
Yeah. Wow.
It was him.
Well, I just want to read your quote. In a deliberate attempt to incorporate a more British sound, the band went to England to do their third album. They began recording at Richard Branson's Virgin Records and Airlines Manor Studios in Oxfordshire in the spring of '73. Soon after, however, Kansky quit the band to be replaced by Peter Rochon. The recording of Mike Oldfield's album Tubular Bells was by this time also getting in the way. So that's what you're talking about now.
Yeah, well, it wasn't getting in our way. It was just amazing to me that I'd spent this time talking to this bloke. Of course, he was nobody then anyway. Richard Branson found him, and he loved him. He thought he was fantastic. In one of Richard Branson's books, I love reading about him, because he couldn't get Mike Oldfield to perform either. And he took him to this gig, and he'd already set it up. There were tons of people. And Oldfield's going, I don't know. He's kind of like Cat Stevens. He wasn't a stage guy. So apparently Branson said, look, do you want this? He had a Rolls Royce. He took him in. He said, I'll give you this car. Please go in and play. So he did. and he got the Rolls Royce.
Amazing. Well, and I think the point to this Tubular Bells was getting in the way was meant to be that it added to the rising cost of the band in England. And I got to know about this. And Godovitz's growing dislike for fish and chips. What was that about?
Well, it was a strange little environment. All in all, it was, but a lot of fun. I mean, I remember one morning waking up and there's a giraffe going by the window, right? And I'm thinking, okay, too much wine there. No, they brought it up for a band that was doing an album there called Giraffe, and they brought it up from the zoo or from Glasgow or somewhere to do a film shoot. But you can imagine waking up in England in Cromwell's Manor and a giraffe walks by your window. It's a little...
That is weird.
You don't expect that.
Absolutely not. Now, let's talk about your most crazy. Let's talk about your most popular song, bud. I've been listening to this song. I'm 55. I've been listening to this song for, years and years since I was, a young lad. And of course, I'm talking about the song "Cousin Mary." Right. And this was a song that it was a hit in '73, but I think you released it in '72 on the Cock On album. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's play this song, Ed, and then we'll come back and talk about it a bit. Like I said, thrilled to have you here because I've been listening to this song for years and years. Folks, we have, yes, thank you. We have Ed Pilling on the show tonight from the band Fludd, folks, and this is a very popular song that you all know. Let's have a listen to Cousin Mary on this House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101.
Cousin Mary was a lady that could really hold her own. She went fighting for her country. She went fighting for a home. Then there's the time she lost her husband. He was fighting for the right. She'll be leaving in the morning. Won't you please say goodnight? All the money in the world couldn't tie old Mary down. You can believe her when she tells you that she's had her turn around. That could be knights and kings and all the horses ready just to fight. She'll be leaving in the morning. Won't you please say goodnight? She'll be leaving in the morning. Won't you please say goodnight? Oh, lovely lady. Oh, lovely lady. Always so fair. She'll be leaving in the morning. Won't you please take good care? Oh, lovely lady. Oh, lovely lady. Always so fair. She'll be leaving in the morning. Won't you please take good care?
Hey, welcome back, folks. We have Mr. Edmund Pilling from the band Fludd. Him and his brother Brian had this incredible popular band called Fludd back in the days, and that was the song Cousin Mary that you heard. Ed, let's talk about Cousin Mary. What a popular song. And you told me a story about the banjo player. Let's touch on that for a bit.
Yeah, well, one of the most important part was that it was definitely inspired by my Aunt Hilda in England, who was the most wonderful lady in the world, and put up with, we lived with her quite a bit in England, my brother and I. But yeah, we did, when we were at Manta Sound Studios, I think it was on Adelaide at the time. That was one of the big studios in Toronto, great place. Anyway, we recorded Carcon down there with Lita Carlo, and Cousin Mary was done there. And as the song was coming to a finish, there was just some things Brian and I wanted more of, and one was a banjo we thought would be a good idea. And one of the blokes, I think he was, I don't think he was the owner, he worked there, part of the place, I'm sorry. And he played, so he came out and played the banjo on it, and I thought that was lovely. And then I thought, I just heard this harmonica part, and so I picked up her harmonica, got it in the right key, and never played a harp before, but I got these few notes that seemed to work, and then all of a sudden we both felt like, that's better. Well, last year that Greg was doing a farewell Gatto gig at the Phoenix, and asked me to come and do it with him, which I always love to do. He always did his Gatto stuff and a couple of Fludd songs. Lo and behold, he freaked me out and brings out the banjo player that played on the original song, who I hadn't seen since that day, on stage to play the song with me, which was such a thrill for me personally. And I know for him, it was, we just thought we would never have thought we'd be on stage playing this song together.
That's amazing.
So it was pretty remarkable. It was one of those lovely things.
Indeed. Did you expect, Ed, Cousin Mary to, usually when you do an album, everybody has expectations of a certain song that may become a hit. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually it's the B-side or something. Did you ever expect that Cousin Mary would be so popular, or did you have another song in mind?
No, I didn't. I thought, I always liked it, but I thought there was a song called Come On, Come On, which also did quite well. That was on there. And a few other things they popped up a little more. Maybe it's because I also wanted the idea of a more rocky tune to represent us. I don't know, but no, I didn't put Cousin Mary as to where it went by any means.
No, of course not.
But then you don't know.
You never know. Like I say, it's just amazing what happens. It's such a weird thing.
It is.
That any song off an album can just become the biggest song on the album or whatnot. Even though Come On,
and you just. I mean, when I moved up here to Innisfil, it's kind of an interesting little thing. Dan Smith, he used to play the drummer for Brutus. I got to meet, he's literally around the corner. And that was just wonderful. I hadn't seen, I didn't even know him back then. I knew the band. I knew Wally quite well, the singer. And then Grant Fulton from Lighthouse just moved up here 2 weeks ago. So I got a couple of neighbors from that time, and it's kind of cool.
That's very cool. Now, yeah. I know you and Greg Godovich have been friends your whole lives, and I know Greg back in the day was an absolute wild man. We love him. He was on the show. We're going to have him back on the show as well as you. So I need you, Ed, to tell me some story about you and Greg on the road, man.
There was a lot of them, and. But there was one I remember only because of the name this guy called me coming out the door. Greg was inside. We just got coffee on a road stop on the highway, and this is when it usually took place because all the drunks are in there from their gigs, their pubs, their whatever. They're on their way home. We're on our way back from our gig, and we're okay. We're not drunk or anything, and getting a coffee. Anyway, I remember being in this one place, and I already heard these guys talking, and they were going to start. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, I'll just avoid this because they used to annoy me to death. But I thought, okay, I got to go. So I'm walking out. I left Greg in there, and apparently he got into a little scuffle with this guy. Well, I was pushing and shoving, and then of course he says to this guy, he told me this after, "Oh yeah, well you better come out here and see my friend Ed." So the guy goes, "Oh, I guess okay." So he comes storming out the door. And I'm standing there by the car with my brother and that, and he, of course, and Greg, I think, said something to the effect, "Ed, this guy, he's trying to, be stupid and whatever. So this guy he says, "Oh, you're Goldilocks to me." So I just flattened him.
Oh, geez, there you go.
And that was the end of that,
Well, there you go. So
that's what I used to do in those days. I didn't waste any time talking. I thought, okay, I know where this is going. I might as well just shut you up right now, and then we can all go home.
We can all go home. Good for you. And I bet you Greg got a good kick out of that too.
Oh yeah. He was just he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, he knew. That's amazing. So, what do you got on the go, bud? What are you doing now, Ed? Are you playing songs, writing songs at home? I know you're anticipating getting out and playing live again, which I hope that happens.
I will guarantee you it'll happen. And
good, because I'm going to be there.
It'll be fun. It'll be with some great people. I'm very lucky that way. I have some really wonderful musical friends, and I've had them for a long time. And hopefully, I certainly want to finish this new album, which I really want to get done, because I haven't done anything like this completely on my own. The last one we did was a few years back. I did it with my brother Steve. It was called Floodlights. And on there is, of course, a special song I wrote for my brother Brian called Missing You. So I wanted to get that done. And it was nice to have Stephen in the Fludd band as part of the Fludd name, which he'd never been before. So that was nice to get done. And this will be called a Fludd album with dear friends on it, people that I love.
That's amazing. And you know what? I'm so excited to announce right now, too, that people are getting back at it. I mean, this is the first gig that I've heard about, live gig coming up on August the 23rd. Good friends of mine, Mike Hayes and Doug Robertson, along with Angel Ritchie. She's a wonderful singer and drummer. Cal Post and Steve Copeland are going to be doing a gig from 2 to 5 on Sunday, August the 23rd at Pingle's Sunflower Experience. So, folks, go online and find that. Yeah, and how exciting is that?
Where is it located?
Pingle's is in. Give me 1 second here. Pingle's is in. Oh, these guys are great too, Ed. They're just amazing.
Oh, I'd love to.
Very talented musicians, but Pingle's is actually what's the address here? It's in Hampton. So Hampton is just north of Bowmanville and east of Oshawa. It's a town called.
Cool. I might be able to go with Gordy Wazik lives in Bowmanville. I haven't seen him he'd love to see it too. I might pick him up and go.
Well, you're more than welcome to come down here afterwards too. So to our place, that would be amazing. So I'm going to send you that information.
Please do.
Where I will definitely send you the information at the end of the show here, Ed. What can I say, man? What an honor to have you on the show. You're an absolute rock star and an absolute gentleman to talk to. The stories that you have are incredible. I can't wait till you set up a gig and I can get out and see you. And definitely we want to have you on the show again. Let's say maybe in a year from now, we'll have you, or next summer, we'll have you back on the show and see what your progress is between now and then. Yeah, absolutely. Our pleasure to have you, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you so much, Ed.
All the best, my friend. Thank you. And thanks for everybody listening.
You're absolutely welcome. And to the listener, I also say thank you for being here, and always dance and sing and let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time.
We got.
Absolutely. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to This House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to This House of Musicians with your host, singer-songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101.
35, one way we're headed at 90K. Over the 2-lane causeway. We'll go left, it's gonna be a classy day. Kickstand